or medicines. Is it all just mythology? I mean, they were there, we weren't. If you have an evolutionary perspective, a worldview, you have to give all of the so-called dragon stories the interpretation of mythology. If you have a creationist worldview, that would really make sense that dinosaurs may have lived with man for 1,000 years or so after the flood. They were getting smaller, they were getting more rare, and they were being hunted to the point of even total extinction in many areas. Then you come up into the present. And there are still many thousands of reports coming out of places around the world of dinosaurs that may still be living. For instance, Loch Ness Monster. There's been hoaxes and frauds, no question. But there have been 11,000 reported sightings of the Loch Ness Monster. And if you show this dinosaur, a plesiosaurus, to anybody who has seen the Loch Ness Monster, they will say, that's it. That's what I saw right there. Well, now, there's no question. Some may be trying to get tourist dollars over there in, Scotland and all that. I've not been there. I do have a map of Loch Ness right here from Scotland with some of the pictures that have been taken of the Loch Ness Monster and an underwater topography of the area. The lake is 900 to 1,000 feet deep. And there have been some very reputable people with nothing to gain but ridicule who have said, I have seen it. So I have spent many years, not out there, bud? I have spent many years collecting data, believe it or not, on dinosaurs that may still be alive. Now, they're not nearly as big, and they're certainly not anywhere in Pensacola, Florida, that I know of. It's not like they're all over the world. But you really can't prove the extinction of anything. And think about that for a minute. You can't prove anything is extinct, because you cannot be all places at all times to examine the whole world simultaneously. There are some who are saying there may be a few dodo birds left on some of these Pacific islands. I don't know. That, they haven't been seen in 300 years, but how can you prove there aren't any? So proving extinction is an impossible thing to do. There are those who are saying that there could be a few dinosaurs still left. If you watch programs like Unsolved Mysteries or Sightings or things like that, you see some awfully bizarre things on there that don't make sense if you have this worldview. Because you've already been taught dinosaurs died out 70 million years ago. Don't dare question that, or you'll be excommunicated from the temples of higher learning, Yes?
Well, I'm detecting a little bit of a straw man here, because if this so-called evolutionist view isn't half as solid as you're making it out to be, there's a big argument now whether or not dinosaurs were warm or cold-blooded, and there's no bird fossils at all. There's only 3 Archaeopteryx fossils in the whole world. Nothing else even looks like a bird. They're real willing to talk about what's the problem with it. And I don't see this monolithic view held by the evolutionists at all. I mean, I just got done going through 6 books on early man for a paper on the Piltdown hoax, and these guys can't agree on a homo habilis at all. There's no view out there that's saying, yes, it's this way, yes, they did this. They're real flexible on that. I think it's kind of who you talk to, but I sure don't detect this evolutionist monolith out there that's has to be, that they're all got this view, because they know.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. But see, what I'm concerned about, I guess, as a high school teacher, is what is in our grade school and junior high and high school textbooks. I assure you, in those books, it is a monolithic worldview. This is the way it happened, boys and girls. It is presented as if it is a fact. There is no other alternatives offered.
Sure.
So at a college level, you may have a good point. But at junior high, high school level, it is a monolithic worldview. This is the way it happened. And so I object to that. I think the teaching of evolution is largely religious, not scientific. Now, we must define our terms. Evolution. I have Webster's Dictionary's definition of evolution. Okay? Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, 2nd College Edition, 1986. Evolution, I'm just going to read part of it here, and you're welcome to look it up for yourself. A development of a species, organism, or organ from its original or primitive state to its present or specialized state, phylogeny or ontogeny. The theory, now generally accepted, that all species of plants and animals develop from earlier forms of hereditary transmission, of slight variations of successive generations. Well, actually, this is, I think, a little deceitful, because what is taught in our textbooks is more than just the idea that parents may have children that are different than the parents a little bit. That would be classified, in my view, as microevolution. There is evolution in that sense as far as variations. I have 3 children, they're all very different. If a couple has 10 children, they're all going to be very different. And your grandkids will be even more different. But that's not really evolution. That's where we need to define the term, I guess, and I should have done this earlier. Micro and macro. I would accept microevolution. I would say, for instance, you could get a variety of mutts from the dog pound, and over the next 50 years, through selective breeding, you could develop a wide variety of dogs. You could maybe even develop the Chihuahua and the Great Dane in 100 years. I don't know, maybe take 500 years, but it could be done. But stand 50 feet away and look at it. It is still a dog. It is obviously not a hamster or a turtle or a tomato. It is not really evolution in the sense that's taught in our textbooks. What's taught in the textbooks is that these examples of microevolution are somehow proof of the general theory of macroevolution. And that's where I disagree. This is a religion. There is no evidence whatsoever to back this up. Nobody has ever seen a fish turn into an amphibian, or an amphibian to a reptile, or a reptile to a mammal. Nobody's ever observed that. Nobody's ever found a fossil. That is a belief. The fact that we have micro changes, I'll put that in the fact column. Micro variations. You can ask anybody that raises anything for a living. Find some fellow who raises tomatoes for a living and tries to develop hybrids or purebreds. He will tell you, oh yeah, you can get a wide variety. You may get 50 different kinds of tomatoes. But there are limits. And when the further you get from the norm, you may get one desirable trait, but you're going to get some real serious defects. Any cattle breeder will tell you, he can get a cow that'll give a lot more milk, but it's not as disease hardy. You know, it succumbs to diseases easily, or some other thing else goes wrong. So that would fit perfectly with the creationist worldview, that God made them after their kind, not species. Each kind of animal was originally created, and there has been variation and diversification within that kind, but nothing changing to a new kind of animal. For instance, dogs. All the different dogs, including the wolf and the coyote and the hyena and the fox, may have had a common ancestor. I wouldn't argue that. But it's still in the dog family. It's still the same kind of animal. You didn't get a new kind of animal out of it. And you may diversify to the point where they are no longer interfertile. Great Dane and a Chihuahua. Though technically they are interfertile, except for mechanical reasons, they could produce a puppy. But they are now classified maybe as a new species, but it's still the same kind of animal. The word species is really where the problem arose back in the 1800s. Darwin could easily see that you could raise pigeons, and he was a great raiser of pigeons. He could easily see that it doesn't take long to develop all kinds of varieties of pigeons. But you're never going to get a crow. And you certainly aren't going to get a mammal or a reptile or a fish out of that pigeon. So all he ever pointed out, and all that has ever been pointed out, is micro changes, which are perfectly compatible with the creationist worldview. There has never been pointed out a macro change. And because of that very thing, there are many now who are going to the punctuated equilibrium theory, like Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge, who are saying, well, we don't see any evidence for evolution, therefore it must have happened rapidly. So you're arguing from the lack of evidence as proof for your theory? Come on, you better try that one more time. That's not going to get past me anyway. Lack of evidence proves it happened? No. To me, that's an indication, hey, maybe the Bible's been right all along. Maybe the only evolution has been micro variation, which really would be a proof of an intelligent creator. If I was going to produce some animals to live in a world that had a variety of climates, I would give that animal an incredible DNA code, so that that animal could produce a variety of babies, and some could survive in any given environment within limits. The rabbit can produce long-haired babies and short-haired babies, and thick fur and short fur, thin fur. Some can survive the hot climates, some can survive the cold climates. And over the last 4,400 years, they have diversified until today. The Alaska rabbits will not interbreed with the Florida rabbits. They cannot. Their breeding cycle is totally different. Now, the Alaska rabbits can breed with the Minnesota rabbits. They're not too far different yet. And the Minnesota rabbits can breed with Florida rabbits, but the two extremes can no longer interbreed. That's not evolution. That's simple variation. It's still the same kind of animal. That's a micro change. It's still a rabbit. You know, stand back and look at it. It is obviously not a turtle. So that's my objection.